profit in mind. The number one thing, I think, first foremost is service. And how can what we do and what we create be of service to people around us? And how can we create communities or businesses that does not really mean success in terms of one individual success, but that success can be replicated in the whole ecosystem. So because we have that kind of approach, I do feel that entrepreneurs here are very mindful of what they do. And mindfulness is very much a part of the entrepreneurship mindset in Bhutan. So we already have the basics, of mindful practices in Bhutan. So all we need to do is really build a really good ecosystem that can support entrepreneurship in Bhutan. And I do feel that there is potential that Bhutan can produce businesses that may not just be solutions, to the world, that may not just be for right now, but even for the future.
Yeah. So I think that that's important. I just want to summarize that for us. What I heard from you, because I think it's important to remember that for everyone. What I heard is resourcefulness. What I heard is a service orientation. What I heard is also a resilience. So resourcefulness in terms of flexibility, resilience. And I think above all, I heard collaborative. And I think that could be a very unique way of actually building an ecosystem, is to really be collaborative. And I think that's your experience, isn't it? At the moment, you're really helping each other in this whole process.
We couldn't have done Samo, without the kind of collaboration that we had with the local creative industry. When we decided to start the startup and I reached out to young filmmakers and producers and actors, everybody jumped in. Everybody was fascinated with the idea that, we could have content, Bhutanese content, available on a digital platform for audiences across the villages to watch, as well as, Bhutanese living all across the world. So that kind of made everybody say, let's do this together. And we're only here because our partners really helped us out in the process.
And I think maybe just before I give to you, Alex, what you said more, and I think is a very important point. I don't know if it's naturally the Bhutanese strength to tell a story. In the sense of a visionary, a business story. But I mean, we're seeing a perfect example here. So in some sense, we're seeing the perfect example of a story being told here about GMC. So I think that's perhaps something to work on.
So I think, first of all, Bhutan, the way I see it from visiting for a short time, has a story. Like people here, everyone I talk to, from the person in the hotel to the cab driver, they kind of have a story, and there's a narrative that they all come back to, whether it's the happiness metric, whether it's the kind of appreciation for the king. There are a lot of things that come back. So I think that there is kind of a coherent story. And I would say that the narrative of a small country that is kind of very much spiritual and so on lends itself well to a lot of the startup ideas in Silicon Valley right now. I think Silicon Valley very much loves all of those kind of spiritual ideas. It's like, the terms that we use are unicorns and angels and oracle and Lotus is a company. I mean, this ethos kind of went west without people noticing that. So in that sense, I think that they already adopted what you have to offer. It's just time to milk it and make it yours.
Super, thank you. And I think, Alex, you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. I just wanted to add very quickly, I think Bhutan has some very unique assets that make it very attractive to become an entrepreneur, but also to sell products abroad. And one of that is the mindfulness, but also the harmony. You live together like within nature, also with the animals. You're not killing the cows, you're not eating the meat. And very wonderful nature, but also very healthy nature. So selling agricultural products, which is the largest industry to abroad, I think gives very positive reception. Many of my friends, when I told them I'm going to Bhutan, they said, that's a wonderful country, I want to go also. So the image of Bhutan and the products coming out of Bhutan is very, very positive. So I think that's a very fertile ground to set up very many different successful companies. So I think it is a very good ground to be a successful entrepreneur.
And maybe just also to turn to you, Lisa, because I think the natural space for some of the innovation of Bhutan is very much in the health, mental well-being space. Okay? And what was your experience? Is that easy to innovate in that space? Are people very receptive to that? Would people be receptive to innovation from Bhutan in that space?
Very much so. When I saw the startup center in Thimphu, I met a company, they sold herbal massage balls. produced herbal massage balls, and they sold it to Germany. And the reception in Germany is very positive. It's natural, it's healing, it comes with a very positive image. And I think you can really realize a premium price in the European market for that. And I think, yes, the reception is very positive.
So maybe it was Elisa. You want to?
Thank you. Right before I came to Bhutan, I was working in a coffee shop, and I overheard a conversation of people talking about Silicon Valley and why is it so successful? Why does it attract so many people? And the woman said something that I wrote in my notebook. She said, it's the place where ideas meet less resistance. And I think for any country that wants to be innovative and successful, not only innovative, but generate revenues, it has to create a perfect environment where these ideas can flourish without many obstacles. And sounds like Bhutan is on the right way and path.
Super. Anna, do you want to add to that?
Yes, and I think another reason why the rest of the world is going to be very receptive to what Bhutan has to offer is we're moving within medicine and within a lot of other psychological, psychiatric practices to a mind, body, spirit model of the mind, whereas before in much of medicine, psychology, it was a very mind, in psychiatry, mind and brain, and in medicine, brain and body, the soul and spirit really was absent. And the fact that Bhutan is such a soul and spirit-based city with mindfulness, with a lot of spiritual practices, this I think is going to be very well received with the paradigm shift that's currently happening in much of the rest of the world with respect to health and healing.
Yeah, so I think, and this again is an important point, Bhutan has a very strong brand. And of course, it could be very clever as the general overall ecosystem strategy for innovation Bhutan for the things that are innovated to support that brand, to be around products which actually support that. Because that, of course, will have a multiple feedback loop for that, okay? And maybe just before we go to the questions, and I'll have questions for each of you still, I just want to summarize what I heard, because I think it's important to kind of summarize this. So I think we heard that there's very concrete things that an ecosystem needs. And realistically, there has to be that being built on the system-wide with the support of the government, okay? And then, of course, once you have that, the basic ecosystem in terms of whether it's the finances in place, whether it's the laws that are in place. We didn't talk so much about the legal laws, but it's also the pool of people, certainly attracting people, attracting Bhutanese successful people from overseas to share their stories is very important to come back. So that's the infrastructure side. We spoke about the human side, where you have a lot of strength to really support those. And then I think overall on the brand side, this collaborative is a very important thing, actually, to really help each other in the kind of building up this ecosystem and being kind of in line with the brand Bhutan to make sure that what is innovated, what is supported in, what is invested in, strengthens the brand of Bhutan, okay? So before we go to the questions, let's do a vote here. How many of you feel, and I'll ask 3 questions in terms of your degree of confidence, okay? How many of you feel a high degree of confidence that Bhutan can be successful in the next 10 years in building a thriving, collaborative, perhaps mindful, entrepreneurial ecosystem? And please be realistic. You don't have to so that's a lot of hands who feel very confident, okay? That's a great testament to what's already going on here. How many people have, some confidence, but have question marks, are not sure, okay? And please, that's very honest. Don't hide your voices, okay? When people get too caught up in the hype, it doesn't work. So keep your hands up. And who has real doubts? Who has real doubts, concerns that this won't work? Okay, not so many. It's also hard to maybe do that in public now. But I want to just encourage that. I think, there's a danger, of course, that we all are inspired. We carry on, with echoing this story of inspiration. But you have to be very realistic. And I think in that sense, I want to come back to, before I open the questions, to remind us that training the mind to perceive reality accurately is actually the core principal practice of Buddhism, okay? It is not about happiness in some sense, it's not about feeling well, it's fundamentally about an accurate perception of reality, okay? So I really want to encourage all of you that are not practitioners, perhaps the Bhutanese who are not practitioners, please rediscover the practice. It is transformative, okay? Okay, so let me now go to some questions. I'd like to maybe start this with a question about access to finance. Okay, so access to finance has been a problem in Bhutan How would the establishment of a public innovation fund address this issue? And perhaps I'll turn to you, Alex, to just kind of suggest, maybe sketch an outline of how this could happen.
Yeah, I think if there's a mainly a full public fund, I think there should be a clear strategy. There should be a clear strategy what kind of companies they should fund, what kind of ticket size there would be, and then there should be a very unbureaucratic, very performance-orientated approach to give entrepreneurs the chance with some very, maybe even small initial funding. And then, of course, there should be a error tolerance, because the challenge.
Who pays of the debt? If you think about this as, I always look at countries' debt from the point of view of balance sheet. And if you have a debt, but you create an asset, and if you're sure it's a good asset, you're wealthier. And you wouldn't have had companies like Google or any company if it didn't get into debt. And you look at what sometimes it's equity, and if you can get equity, and I'll mention that in a second. But if you don't take in some sense some kind of investment, you can't do anything. So the real question is judgments about the return on those, and are they higher than the rate of interest? Significantly higher to compensate for the risks that you're encumbering. And I think that if the whole project is managed well, clearly there are large returns that are potential. I haven't looked at the numbers, so I can't, but I assume the people who are running this have looked at the numbers on a reasonable basis. Okay. Now, this is longer term investment than the private sector often wants to do. The infrastructure part is longer term, and that's a critique that I have of the private sector financial market. It tends to be short term and not focused on things that are really important, like jobs. So for me, that's why the world has created development banks, and like the World Bank. And there's a division of the World Bank called IFC that specializes in more commercial projects. So I hope that the World, and the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the New Development Bank. So there are a number of development banks that could be a source of finance. It would mean, as you say, that if you didn't look at the asset side, you might get more worried. But Bhutan took the risk of increasing its debt to finance hydro, and I think people now say that was a good investment. The contract terms weren't always the best. And so one of the things, if I were an outside advisor, which I'm not, I would say, look very carefully at contract terms. So, but the general principle at the level you put it, I'd say this has the potential clearly of being something that would pay for itself. The first question you asked, just remind me.
That was the first question about financing the second.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stiglitz. Could I open up for another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And again, if you could let us know your name and where you...
My name is Tenzing Lawson. I'm the editor of a weekly newspaper called The Bhutanese. My question to you is, and forgive me if you already asked this because I walked in a bit late. What would be your advice, because we are going into this huge mega project Ilufu Mindfulness City, given your experience, you would be